After World War II, Italy and Europe were trying to rebuild everyday life destroyed by bombs and culture. It was within this new bustling cultural scene that Italian composers Luciano Berio and Bruno Madana decided to found an experimental electronic music studio in Milan. It functioned along the lines of two other European centres, the one at the Nordwestdeutscher Rundfunk in Cologne and the GRM at the Radiodiffusion Télévision Française in Paris. The Studio di Fonologia Musicale was born in June 1955 in the Milan headquarters of RAI, the national public service broadcaster, and it would remain active until 1983. In the late 50s, the studio became a worldwide pole of attraction for contemporary composers. In Italy, Luigi Nono, Niccolò Castiglioni, Aldo Clementi, Franco Donatoni, Angelo Pagagnini, Roman Vlad are just few of the many composers working here. Henry Purcell and John Cage visited the studio in 1957 and 58, respectively. But the role of the studio quickly grew beyond musical production. It became a catalyst for the Italian cultural scene, involving musicologists, writers, filmmakers. The creative intuitions of Berio and Madana met the skills and passion of two technicians. Physicist Alfredo Lietti, head of RAI Technical Department in Milan, designed and built most of its devices, true technological rarities, by assembling spare electronic components stocked in the RAI warehouse. Marino Succheri, the studio technician, was to become an epic character, the technician-performer of most of the music produced here. In the late 50s, the studio was one of the best equipped electronic music labs in the world, with 9 sinusoidal oscillators, a white noise generator, octave and third octave filters, the famous amplitude selector, and several other pieces of equipment. The amplitude selector was the main instrument that Henry Purcell used at the studio to compose Scambi, one of the very first examples of the open musical forms analysed by Umberto Eco in his essay, An Open Work. Purcell created several sequences of sound which could be combined and organised according to a set of loose rules, and in this way deliberately leaving some details unfixed and open to the interpretation of the performer. The Dream Project aims at bringing this unique heritage back to life, but the first steps towards the recovery of the studio date back to 1995, when Maddalena Novati started cataloguing and digitizing tapes, and soon after to recover materials and devices. In 2008, the whole studio, with the devices and furniture, was reconstructed at the Museum of Musical Instruments in Milan.
After the retirement of Zuccheri and the closure of the studio, all the devices were sent to RAI in Turin. They remain in Turin for about 20 years, together with other disused equipment. We first moved the devices back to RAI Milan in 2003, with the help of Massimo Ferrario, head of the TV production department, and with the collaboration of Giovanni Belletti. The museum exhibit was set up in 2008 during the Mito Settembre Musica Festival.
However, most of the original equipment of the studio does not exist anymore, or it is not functioning. Dream researchers have therefore created virtual reconstructions of these devices.
In many cases, all we have are the project schemes by Lietti. And using this, we simulate the original devices on the computer and try to reproduce each single detail of the analog electronics. And this also includes possible imperfections. In the scientific literature, this is known as physically based sound modeling, since what we do is try to reproduce the physical reality. In this way, we preserve the original timbre and behavior of those instruments, because we don't want to synthesize perfect digital sinusoids. What we want to do is to reproduce the analog sinusoids of the Lieti oscillators.
But a musical instrument is not just its sound, it's also its user interface, the control component that a performer interacts with in order to produce a particular sound.
The goal of our group in the DREAM project is to recreate the physical interfaces using hardware and software technologies. In this way, the interaction between a performer and an instrument can be reproduced. To achieve this goal, we analyzed the historical pictures and written documents to understand the technicalities of the interfaces and the role of each single button or potentiometer. A very useful source in this regard are the sketch plans of the equipment of the studio drawn by John Cage. We physically reconstructed the panels of the instruments and connected them to a computer through dedicated embedded hardware and software.
Thanks to this work displayed at the Milan Museum, visitors are able to experience the ancient analog technology of the studio and to rediscover its musical masterpieces, both from the artistic and the technological point of view.
We decided to focus on Henri Pousseur's Scambi because it's one of the very first examples, possibly the first example, of an open-form electroacoustic composition. This means some of the details are left unfixed and are thus open to the interpretation of anyone wishing to make a new realization of the work. Pousseur even imagined making this composition material available in some kind of music workshop, where active listeners, as he called them, could rearrange Scambi's sections in new, different configurations. It's a remarkably prescient vision of certain developments in contemporary music, and in a way, we are trying to fulfill Pousseur's vision.